last lesson. It's on insulin and glucagon. These guys are easy. Insulin and glucagon are produced by the pancreas. They are two hormones and they have opposite functions. Insulin decreases blood glucose and glucagon increases blood glucose. So we're just gonna start and say, let's say you eat a meal, and let's say like the meal is like, I don't know, a Slurpee. I don't know, all of a sudden you have increased blood glucose, right? So what that means is all of a sudden you have lots of glucose in your blood. So here's your blood. Here's the sugar, the glucose in your blood. You have an increase in glucose in the blood. And so what is going to happen when you have this increased glucose in the blood is you're going to release, here's your pancreas. You're going to release insulin from the pancreas. So insulin is released, okay? And insulin is released when you, in response to high blood glucose. So you're going to get increased insulin. So now what does insulin do? Imagine this is your cell. And here's insulin. Okay, well, insulin, now this is what I call a glucose gate. Now, I want you guys to remember, you ate a huge meal, so what you have is increased glucose in the blood, right? So imagine this is your blood. You've just released insulin, right? And this is what I call a glucose gate. Now, the insulin actually will bind, so imagine this is insulin here. Insulin binds here, so that's the insulin that's binding, and it opens the gate. So without insulin, the gate stays closed. With insulin, the gate opens, and when the gate opens, glucose can now make its way in. So now the cell uses up the glucose, and you get a decrease in blood glucose, right? So insulin opened up the glucose gates, glucose moves in. What's happening to the glucose in your blood? Well, it's going down because now your cell is actually opening it up and glucose is being allowed in, right? So if you have an increase in blood glucose, you guys are going to release insulin from the pancreas. Insulin opens the glucose gates. Glucose moves in. And what you're going to get is a decrease in blood glucose. Okay? So that's what's happening here. I hope that makes sense. Another thing that insulin does is it actually increases the storage of glucose to glycogen. So here's the liver. And imagine here's your blood. And imagine you have all this sugar, this glucose in your blood. What it's going to do is it's going to store in the liver. It's going to store it as glycogen. And so what you're doing is you're again removing glucose from the blood, and it lowers blood glucose even more. And that's insulin. Okay? Now glucagon does the reverse. So glucagon does the reverse. Glucagon increases blood glucose. So let's say you have really low blood sugar, and that just means you are hypoglycemic, which is when you have too much sugar. Like if you have too much sugar, then you're hyperglycemic, right? People who have like diabetes, if you have diabetes, you don't produce insulin. And if you don't produce insulin, you can't open the glucose gates. So that means the glucose stays in your blood. And if it stays in your blood and it doesn't go into your cell dies because it's not making any energy and it's not letting the glucose in. There's no energy, it dies. Right? That's what happens. Okay, so let's say you have a decrease in blood sugar, and let's say that you're not eating enough. I don't know. Let's say that's the scenario here. So what you're going to do is you're going to release glucagon, which travels to your liver and tells your liver to release glycogen to to glucose, right? So now remember that glycogen, you're going to tell it to release glucose. And if you do that, you're going to increase your blood sugar, right? And that's glucagon. It kind of all sounds the same, like glucagon, glycogen, glucose. But glucagon is the hormone. It's released by the pancreas, okay? It targets the liver, and it tells the liver to take that stored glycogen and convert it to glucose, which then increases blood glucose, and now you can now you can restore homeostasis. Anyways, I think that's about all I want to say about all the hormones. I'm not sure how much more detail Dr. Taylor went into. You can definitely check hers out. But as far as what I would like you to know, I mean, that's about it. Okay, guys, have a good